Alrighty, just waiting on Facebook to catch up with me because I'm faster. Ready. And it looks like I am live on Facebook. Awesome. And I'm just going to share this into a group. Right. Checking for consistency, making sure all the shares went through. All right, so we are live. Nice. How's it going, everyone? This is Jared from Carbon Digital, and we're here live in the Digital Foundations group talking about what is traffic. So traffic actually covers quite a lot of aspects. And just in case anyone's wondering, primarily monitoring comments from the Digital Foundations group, but I will check the other places just in case. So the question is, what is traffic? So traffic actually covers several different areas. So on my image here, I have the 4 areas listed as ads, SEO, affiliates, and media. So let's kind of break these down a little bit, right? So whenever we're talking about traffic, we're not talking about driving behind a car and getting stuck in traffic. What we're talking about is the volume of people and the acquisition of people to get to your website, right? How are you getting people to your website, and what's the volume? That's normally what we're talking about. And so those 4 areas, ads, SEO, affiliates, and media, those are the ways, the big ticket ways that you actually get people to your website. And so we're just going to run down the list. First one here is ads. So there's lots of different places where you can do paid advertising, right? You have newspapers, magazines, radio, TV, podcasts. You can do social media advertising. You can do Google, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Pinterest, TikTok. All of these different social media platforms also has their own aspect for advertising. So you have the traditional routes, and then you have the social media routes. And every bit of that, you're going to spend money to get people through the door. And a lot of people ask, well, how do I know that spending money is the answer? Right? Like, how do I know that if I spend money here, it's definitely going to result in people coming to my website? That's where a lot of the stuff we talked about last time was branding. A lot of that branding message ties into the advertising aspect, because if you have a solid brand message, you can apply that brand messaging and make sure you hit the pain points for the customers, right? So what are pain points? Pain points are the problems that your customer has, right? So if you are a tire repair shop and your sole purpose in life is to swap tires and plug tires, right? So a pain point will be having a flat, right? And so one of the ways that you can market to people is say, don't wait to get that flat. You know, there's a lot of different ways you can approach that, but the idea is you want them to know that the result of not doing business with you is potentially having a flat tire, getting stuck on the highway somewhere where there's no cell service. Worst case scenario, right? Or maybe that flat causes a 32 car pile up because it exploded because it had too much pressure, some crazy shit. You know, a lot of these different areas, a lot of these different avenues, different things that could go wrong as a result of not having proper tires. So it's these things that you got to really capture. You want to captivate this whenever you work on your advertising. And that is the reason why paid advertising is so effective right now. So whenever you do this advertising, there's lots of different places where all of these different places have their own conversion rates, right? They have their own level of conversions for people. So think about podcasts and radio, the audio aspect of that. You're going to have of one level of conversions. Um, there's a guy out there. His name is Andy Frisella. Excuse me. He talks about whenever they first got into radio advertising, and the reality was that it didn't really do as much business for them as they anticipated. But the truth of the matter is that if they don't advertise on radio, then somebody else is going to. So that's one of those things where they've grown to a point where they're so big that they kind of have to. And then when we're at the smaller stages of business, that's not necessarily the case, because you want to make sure that every dollar counts. And the way that you make sure every dollar counts is by at least focusing in on what works. And so I can't tell you how many times I've used a mobile app or I've been on YouTube and an ad comes on, or Pandora. Good God. I can't tell you how many times we've all been there, right? We're enjoying what we're doing, playing a game on our phone, we're watching something on YouTube, or listening to some music. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, an ad comes into play, and it's always some shit you don't want. Always. That's just the way things work. It's always something you don't want. It's usually something tied to, well, in many cases, it can be something tied to what your recent search history looks like. And so that is some of the most annoying stuff you'll ever see. But that's advertising, right? It really is. So unless you're trying to build your own, I don't even know, unless you have your own gaming app, advertising on another game might not make sense. If you get a lot of traffic off of YouTube, advertising on YouTube might make sense. So it really just depends on where your audience is located, and it depends on how much you have to invest in advertising. Quite frankly, though, when we're looking at being laser focused, Google and Facebook have the best capabilities. And the reason for that is because they have the best level of targeting that you can get. So when we talk about targeting, I have a buddy who does marketing in hyper specific niches, and he actually targeted one single zip code with a 1 mile radius, so that entire zip code and nothing else. And he only targeted people that worked at a specific company. That is how specific he works with. But you know what? It works. It's no different with Google. Can have that same capability. Well, Google doesn't necessarily have the data pertaining to where you work, so that aspect might not be there. But you can tie any type of search history, probability of clicking on your ad, all kinds of different things like this that tie into advertising. And so that's why Google and Facebook are the top two, because you can do so much with them. And when you actually put that much thought and effort into it, it's typically quite successful. So I know people who run campaigns at $5 a day. I also know people who run campaigns at $1,000 a week, $5,000 a week. So it really depends on what you're going after. But paid advertising is definitely something that should be in the wheelhouse. So a lot of people, realistically, paid advertising can get you exactly where you want to be, as long as your ad is done well, as long as it speaks to the audience and it's placed correctly, and all of the, targeting is done correctly. as long as all of that's there, the potential for success and having an ROI on your ad is there. It really is. I don't tend, historically for me, I don't typically run ads until you reach a point where you've mastered the basics of this foundation stuff. And the reason for that for me, which is my preference, not something everyone needs to do, the reason for that for me is because the probability of me wasting money is significantly less. Because if you establish your foundation and your baseline, then when you go to do your advertising, it's significantly easier to close. That's exactly what it is. And so that's the reason I do it that way. But there's still instances where advertising right out the gate's the best choice. It just turns out like that sometimes. So it really depends on what your situation is, but you definitely need to look into it. You need to assess what your needs are. You need to assess what your capabilities are. And quite frankly, if you don't have the ability to knock out a kick-ass type of ad, then you shouldn't be doing it. And good God, do not go out there and boost posts. Boosting a post on Facebook is the easiest way to lose money. Stop doing it. Boosting a post on Facebook does nothing for you because there's no target associated with it. So what you're doing is you're just throwing it out there for anyone to see, which is the opposite of advertising. Because advertising lets you laser focus into who your audience is and target those people specifically. That's why you should never boost a post. You can use a post in your ad, but you should not boost a post. Don't do it. Stop doing it. If that's you out there, just fucking stop. You're wasting money every time. I don't care what the numbers say. I don't care what you think its return is. You're wasting money every time. Seriously. So let's move on to something a little more free. SEO. Lots and lots of shit tied to SEO. So let's get into it, right? There's many, many different aspects of SEO. There's at least 7, maybe 8 different aspects of SEO, right? We have something called technical SEO. Now, anytime we're talking about indexing by Google, so indexing is Google's process for scanning your website and adding it to their database. That is called indexing. If you are not indexed, you will not have any search results because everything that happens in Google search is a result of indexing. Okay? So if your website is not indexed, it does not show up in Google. People go out there and search for shit. Kind of a big deal. So after indexing, you have something called schema. Schema is something that tells Google, specifically Google, it tells Google all of the specific criteria for your website. And what we're looking at is the organizational criteria, right? What's your company name? What's your address? What's your phone number? What's your email address? Where are you located? Different things like this are in your schema. And the schema is a baseline requirement for Google to be able to understand who you are. There's many different aspects of this. Another technical piece would be something called Open Graph. So you ever published a link, just copy and paste the link and put it on Facebook, and you look at the image that populates with it, and you're like, man, where the fuck did that image come from, right? That's what we're looking at with the Open Graph, which is Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter's ability to be able to read your website based off of any link you put out there, any link that you share. So open graph is basically your company information, right? What type of information do you want out there? And what it's looking at is it's looking at a baseline. At a minimum, here's the image to use, here's the text to use on every page, here's how the information is presented. So you'll see at the top of your browser, or when you share a link, you'll see the image and you'll see some text. That text is called the meta title. It's the meta description, or it's not the meta description, it's the title for that page. And so that title you can have your own specific formatting rules tied to it. And so your open graph settings tell Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter how to display your company page whenever you put it out there. And so that's what these open graph settings are. You can look at them as, here's my baseline, and if I don't put anything out there, here's what's defaulting to. So that way you can have a default for the entire site, and then per page put in something different. That's the way that works. And the whole premise of that is to make your links on social media look better, because Facebook has created the standard, and a lot of the other companies like Instagram, part of Facebook, and Twitter can also use an open graph. So sometimes Twitter will default to whatever Facebook has. Sometimes Twitter uses its own. You can use your own for Twitter, use a separate one. But sometimes you can default to whatever Facebook has. It depends on how your website's been, how it's set up. But nonetheless, that's the technical side of things. Then you have something called on-page SEO. So a lot of people out there have WordPress. So if you have WordPress, you're going to go and you're going to look at one of these plugins like Yoast, Rank Math, SEO Press, one of these plugins that helps you with your SEO, right? So the way that these plugins work is you go to a page or blog post, you put some stuff in the blog post, and then you go to the section where that plugin section is at for all the SEO for that. And you go in and you update your blog post and you look at the score. Well, it's not high enough. You go back and you update your blog post and you look at the score. Everything about that is on-page SEO. And what we're looking at here for on-page SEO, you can do this with any platform, though not every platform has tools like the SEO plugins for WordPress are the best out there. There's not too many other platforms out there that have this level of capability within their features. But what we're looking at is every page is supposed to have a specific set of things, right? You got to have a title, you have to have a description, you have to have some sort of focus for that page, right? So if you're looking at a services page and you do roofing, whatever that page is should be talking a shit ton about roofing. And that's how all of that falls in line with the on-page SEO, because you want to make that page as best as it can be to increase the search result probability that your page comes up. That's it. And so there's a lot of different features out there, a lot of different tools out there that'll help you do that. There's different things like Ahrefs, SEMrush. There's one called Nightwatch. There's a whole bunch of different ones out there where you can scan your website or scan a page, and it'll tell you what the score of it is. So the score is actually something that's relative to whatever Google says. Doesn't mean you're guaranteed anything, but it's just a visual representation of what you have. Not necessarily reality, because Google can change the algorithm whenever they want, and they change it frequently. So It really depends on people and how people search, how people go to Google to get results. So all of that's tied into the on page. So all of that same stuff where we're looking at the title and the description and the image that's visible on Facebook whenever you share a link, that same capability is tied into every page, every blog post, everything. And so that all falls into the on-page SEO. Right? Then you have things like off-page SEO. And so off-page SEO is a lot to do with strategy. Strategy to boost the authority for your website. And so this is going to include things like, well, authority. Let's talk about that real quick. So authority is a word in the digital marketing space that talks about how much knowledge a person has on a subject. That's basically what it is. A higher authority means that you have more knowledge. That's generally how that works. And so the off-page SEO is for boosting your authority. And the way that works is with a couple of different aspects. The first and most significant one is keyword research. You have to figure out what people are searching for so you can figure out what to give them. That's the way that works. If people are searching, if 1,000 people within my town search for, Wendy's new banana nut frosting, then you better believe if I'm Wendy's, I better have something on banana nut frosties. That's the reality of it. So what we're doing is we're taking what people are looking for and we're providing an answer for them with our keyword research. And so our keyword research tells us exactly what topics we should write blog posts about, what topics we should create videos about or do a podcast series about. That's what the keyword research is for. It tells us what content to provide because this is what people are looking for. It's really that simple. And that ties into our strategy. How are we going to achieve creating all this content? What's our release frequency? How is all this being mapped out? Different things like that. It's actually quite an extensive operation to set up an entire SEO strategy because you have to start with keyword research, then you have to look at your different outlets. How are you putting content out there? All this different stuff. And it can be daunting because there's a lot of pieces involved. But nonetheless, it's highly important. So, strategy. The next piece we're looking at is backlinks. You might have heard this before, backlinks. And so, a backlink is a website that links back to your website. What does that mean? Well, it means that another website out there has taken your website, and the URL for your website, or a page for your website, or a blog post for your website. They've taken a link that takes someone to your website, and they put it on their website. Ergo, backlink. So backlinks are part of your authority strategy, boosting your authority. And so the way that works is, if I go write a blog post for Forbes, I would expect Forbes to put my website URL out there. And it should be something called a follow link. It should be a relationship follow, because if they're putting me in for a blog post that I wrote, then they should have confidence in what I'm writing. Because of that, it should be considered a follow link. And so the difference is that whenever I go to scan my website, if it shows up as a follow link, then it's going to show up in my results. It's going to let me know that I have a backlink out there at Forbes. Same thing with all of these different news websites any digital magazine website, any website really. If I write an article for any website, they better be providing a backlink, because that's an extra boost in my authority. And that's what everyone wants. That's the only reason that people are out there doing guest blog posts and shit like that. I can guarantee you that's the only reason. The reason for it is so they can get more exposure for their own company. Now, realistically, there's going to be some people out there that are just trying to help, right? But helping with no exchange of revenue, no exchange of money, is not probable, which is normally why the cost is a backlink. But all of that ties into the off-page SEO. Building your authority, that's what it's all about. So, next we have local SEO. Local SEO is the practice of applying your city and state to your website for the purpose of gaining more traction locally. And the way that works is, there's several different aspects, but the first aspect is something called citations. Citations means that your company information is out on another website. That's basically what that means. There's a lot of different websites that you can use. So all things social media are a form of citation. So Facebook needs to have, well, all of these sites need to have three pieces: name, address, phone. Every time. You need to have name, address, phone, and they need to be consistent everywhere. So on Facebook, your profile should have an address and it should have a phone number. Unfortunately, citations don't currently care about website and email. I suspect that one day they will, but today they don't. But if you can include them, include them. What we're looking at is different things like Facebook, Google My Business, which is a huge one. If you don't have a Google My Business, you probably need to look at it because it's huge. We're going to circle back to that in a moment, but Facebook, Google My Business, Yelp, these are different websites. Trust me, there's thousands out there, so there's plenty. But there's plenty of different websites. You know, if you're a construction company, Home Advisor would be a citation for you. It's basically a backlink in the form of your company information. That's basically what it is. So everywhere that your company information can be found out there in all these ethical different places, those are the places where you need to put your information. There's lots of different ways to do this. There's different services you can do this. I actually have software that I use where I just type in the information once, hit a button, and all that stuff's added automatically for me. So I don't have to actually go out there to 1,000 websites and update them myself. I just type it in once, hit a button, done. Right? I know a lot of people out there think that this is everything that you need to do for SEO. No, it is not. If that's your entire SEO strategy, you're losing money. That's what it is. Because there's all of these other aspects tie into what we're doing here, what we're talking about here with citations. Citations are one piece, and they're not really, they're a long-term plan, right? It's one of those things where you can type in all your information, hit the button, and kick it out, and so for the next 12 months, everything gets updated, and you're good. That's part of the strategy, but it's nothing that's going to produce any results immediately. It never is. It never will be. Just because you have your information out there on 100 websites doesn't mean shit when you're looking at somebody to give you money. They don't care. Those citations will eventually help you in your SEO, but not on day one, not in month 3. That's still way too early in the process for this to be beneficial. So, citations, kind of a big deal. Okay, next thing we want to look at is reputation management. What does that mean? That means reviews, online reviews. So every time you get an online review, you should be communicating with that person, no matter what. If you're not getting online reviews, that's a problem. Every customer, you should be asking every customer for a review every time. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what you do. You should ask for a review every time. And you frame it in a way that says, I want to help make my business company, and you have a way for me to do that. Right? That's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to make your company better. And the way that you do that is in the form of reviews. When things go wrong, you need to know. When things go right, you need to know. That's the way the reviews work. So, there's so much stuff tied into SEO. It's crazy. So next we have, that's not everything for SEO. There's also different things, gray hat, white hat, black hat, lots of other different areas, but we're not going to go into those because, quite frankly, some of them are unethical and some of them require an extensive amount of information. And so what we have here is kind of like the baseline. But moving on, we'll talk about affiliates. So affiliates are your influencers and your people who refer customers to you. That's who your affiliates are. And the way that works is you can do it a couple of different ways. You can have it as a manual process where someone sends someone to you. Someone will send you a customer, and then you have to figure out from them, or even ask them, hey, how did you get here? And if they tell you how they got there, then you'll know how they got to be your customer. That's one aspect of it. Or you can use an automated system that actually talks about, that actually tracks all of your referrals. So basically you have every referrer, every person that becomes a referral partner or an affiliate or an influencer, all of those guys get their own link for your website. And this link tracks anyone who clicks on it. It tracks all their actions. And so the way that works is whenever they make a purchase, that information is tracked and it's updated in this system. And basically you'll put out like a monthly payment, right? So if I'm selling a $1,000 widget and I'm giving away 10%, which is $100, and I have 5 people who all give me 10 orders, right? 5 people, 10 orders. So 10 times, 50 orders times 1,000, 50,000, right? I owe $500 or $5,000 in fees to these people that brought me customers. Let me make sure that's right. If 5 customers, 10 orders times 1,000, 50,000. Yep. So 5,000 in fees. Yep, that's correct. So now the reason that you would want to do this is if you have a product where other people could put it out to their network. And that's where you'll see a lot in the fitness and apparel industries. You'll see a lot of affiliate marketing done through social media influencers. And so it's important that you define what an influencer is. And it's important that you define what rules you want your influencers to abide by, because they're essentially becoming part of the company. And you want to make sure that they're following your brand guidelines, so to speak. And all of this has to be predefined. But nonetheless, if you do it correctly, you can easily sell a whole lot more money. That's the influencer side of the house. The affiliate side of the house, which is something I'm involved with, is I'm not doing affiliate marketing. I'm just an affiliate. There's a significant difference. Affiliate marketing is something like Amway, where excuse me, where you become part of their company and you sell their stuff, right? So, for example, like Avon. Everyone and the mother knows Avon. Avon is affiliate marketing where you sell something for someone else. And it could be simple, where you just provide a link to a store and they buy stuff and you make money, or it could be more involved, like Avon, where you have to go door to door and talk to people and sell it for yourself. Nonetheless, that's still affiliate marketing in its entirety. What I'm talking about is the same concept, but no involvement. So I'm in the digital space, and there's lots of different software out there. And so a lot of these different software companies actually have their own affiliate system set up for their software. So I will sign up to be one of their affiliates, and they'll give me a link, and then I'll put that link on my website. I'll write a blog post about it, and then I'll apply all the SEO metrics to it to make it get more visibility. And then when people click on that link, they go to the software company's website, and if they buy, I get some extra money. That's all that I'm doing. And it's very simple, but when you apply this to your business, it's very powerful. So I'm actually implementing a 10% affiliate fee for my company. So if someone brings me a $10,000 client, they get $1,000. That's a lot. I might go to 5% because that's still a lot. But nonetheless, having God, that's a shit ton. Okay. Having this type of affiliate system for your company is really powerful because it gives people an incentive to sell more for you. And so that's another way that you can bring more traffic to your website, put more people on in front of you, basically put you in front of more people. That's the idea. So the next one is media. Media appearances is what that stands for. And so media appearances is anything out there that's a media source. So we're talking the news, online or in person, the news, newspapers, magazines, radio shows, podcasts. Those are different media sources. And whenever you get onto those media sources, you're gaining exposure. And normally those media sources will put your website out there, not necessarily for if you're on the news and it's live, you're probably not going to get a link to your website, right? Because you're on TV. But at the same time, a lot of that on TV stuff gets repurposed and put on the website, in which you might actually get a backlink for that, which is really cool. So all of these media appearances help boost your authority because your name shows up more. Now, unless your website is the same name as your name, it's going to be hard to track your authority. Like there's no actual metric to track an individual's authority. And that's sad because there should be, but there's not. There's a way to track your domain authority, but not your individual authority. But one of the ways that you can do that is you can just type in the person's name in Google, and you can see what shows up. Just their name, nothing else. If you use an incognito or a private browser, even better. If you use a VPN with a different city in your country, excuse me, even better. Because those things will get you outside of your bubble that you're in. And so if you get great results from that search when you're doing that, that probably means that their authority is quite well. You want to vet the sources and read them and stuff like that, but that's kind of how you gauge a person's authority. That's how you can tell if someone's legit or if they're a scam. But nonetheless, so those are the 4 different aspects of traffic. Technically, if you want to separate affiliates into 2, affiliates and influencers, that's fine, but it's all kind of the same concept. So these are the 4 areas of traffic: advertising, SEO, affiliates and influencers, and media sources. And so when you apply all 4 of these at the same time, it's highly powerful. Highly powerful. And there's a lot of areas I didn't include into traffic. And you're probably thinking, well, what if I send out emails or text messages or talk to them on social media and get them to go to my website? Yep, definitely true. But that's a different type. That's a different problem. That's what falls into the outreach problem. And so we'll talk about that when we get there. But for now, that's basically everything that I wanted to talk about today. And if anyone is out there paying attention, I don't say anyone live watching this right now, but if anyone's out there paying attention, come Monday, we can definitely have some crazy conversations, lots of different stuff. So I really hope you guys take a look at this, listen to it all, and write down some questions that you have. So when we circle back on Monday, we can knock them out. All right, I'm gonna do a quick check for questions. So right now I'm in the Vetpreneur Tribe, no questions. Digital Agency Battlefield, no questions. My personal profile, no questions. Digital Foundations, no questions. All right, guess you guys are not so talkative today. Not a problem. We'll circle back on Monday and take it from there. All right, guys, until next time.